April 8, 1943. 27,000 feet above occupied France. The crystalline canopy of a Focke-Wulf, 190 A5 framed. A sky so blue it felt solid, and Oberleutnant Ralph Hermischen could not suppress his smirk. Through the hiss of his oxygen mask, the veteran ace of Jagdgeschwader 26 watched ungainly silhouettes claw laboriously toward his formation. The Americans have sent us flying milk bottles. He transmitted to his wingman, the laughter audible even over the crackling radio. Far below, 16 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts of the 4th Fighter Group heaved upward in painfully tight formation, their 2,000 horsepower. Pratt & Whitney R-2800, double Wasp engines, 18 cylinders of raw mechanical fury, strained against 7 tons of aluminum, armor, and ammunition. To eyes accustomed to the sleek Spitfires and darting Soviet Yaks, these corpulent machines appeared almost comical. Barrel-shaped fuselages, topped with greenhouse canopies, wings that looked too small for the massive bodies, propellers that dwarfed anything in the Luftwaffe inventory. Hermischen saw prey. He did not see the future. What he and the German pilots circling like wolves above could not imagine was that they were witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically dismantle the Luftwaffe's fighter arm, the machine that would turn their laughter into ash. Within 18 months, those flying milk bottles would become instruments of overwhelming power. Their 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns creating the most feared sound in German skies, a sound that meant the fight was already over. The mathematics of destruction were already loaded into those broad wings. 3,400 rounds of ammunition, a combined rate of fire exceeding 6,000 rounds per minute. Enough concentrated firepower to tear an aircraft in half in less than 2 seconds. The transformation began that April morning, though no one on either side could yet feel the tremors. The American formation that day was commanded by Major Donald Blaylock, a veteran of the RAF's Eagle, squadrons who had transferred from Nimble Spitfires just weeks earlier. He knew what his men did not. Surviving in the P-47 required abandoning everything they thought they understood about air combat. The Thunderbolt was not a dogfighter. It was a radical departure from every fighter design philosophy that had come before. While German engineers pursued lightweight interceptors optimized for climb and turn, Republic Aviation had created a high-altitude juggernaut designed to use mass, power, and overwhelming firepower to dictate the rules of engagement. Among the 56 American pilots scattered across that French sky were men whose names would later inspire dread in Luftwaffe briefings, future aces like Hub Zemke, David Schilling, and Robert Johnson. But on April 8, 1943, they were novices in an untested machine, facing the most experienced fighter force on the planet. The Germans had been fighting continuously since 1939. Their veterans had honed their skills over Poland, France, Britain, and Russia. The Americans had exactly 0 days of combat. The German pilots who banked down toward them had every reason to feel invincible. They had no way of knowing that industrial logic was about to collide with tactical brilliance, that quantity and quality would soon merge into an avalanche no amount of skill could withstand. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was born from panic. In June 1940, as German panzers swept across France, Alexander Kartveli, Republic Aviation's Georgian-born chief designer, received an urgent specification from the U.S. Army Air Corps: build a high-altitude interceptor capable of matching the Luftwaffe's best. What Kartveli designed instead was a monster. "It will be a dinosaur," he admitted to his team. But it will be a dinosaur with good proportions. When the XP-47B prototype staggered into the air for the first time on May 6, 1941, it stunned everyone who saw it. Empty, it weighed 9,900 pounds. 6 85% heavier than its predecessor. The massive turbo-supercharger system, with complex ducting snaking through the rear fuselage, gave the aircraft a bulging, almost pregnant appearance. Test pilots invariably asked the same question. This thing actually flies? It did more than fly. It dominated the thin air where other fighters gasped. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800, an air-cooled radial marvel, could maintain full power at 27,000 feet, an altitude where German engines wheezed. The exhaust-driven turbo-supercharger delivered sea-level pressure to the carburetor in the stratosphere, giving the Thunderbolt a realm all its own. But mastering that power proved deadly. Major Hubert Hub Zemke's 56th Fighter Group, training at Bridgeport, Connecticut, lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft in accidents between September 1942 and January 1943. The P-47 ground-looped viciously on landing, Torque rolled on takeoff, and dove with such enthusiasm that pilots encountered compressibility for the first time, their controls locking as shock waves rippled across the wings. The machine killed more Americans in training than the Germans would in the first months of combat. Yet those who tamed it discovered something extraordinary. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a farm boy from Oklahoma who would eventually score 27 aerial victories, described his initiation. It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. You didn't fly it, you aimed it. The first combat encounters in April and May 1943 appeared to confirm every German prejudice. The P-47s could not turn with the agile Focke-Wulf 190s. They could not climb with the razor-like Messerschmitt 109s at medium altitudes. Luftwaffe pilots quickly developed tactics to exploit these flaws, attacking from below where the heavy Thunderbolts struggled, forcing turning engagements where raw power mattered less than nimbleness. Hauptmann Josef Pips Priller, commanding officer of Jagdgeschwader 26, filed a report brimming with contempt. The new American fighter's easy prey. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. Our boys are calling them Indiana, fat targets pretending to be warriors. The statistics seem to support German confidence. In their first month of operations, American fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts while confirming only 3 German kills. The RAF, watching from Spitfire squadrons, quietly suggested the Americans might reconsider their mount. A joke circulated among British pilots that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the roomy cockpit. But something peculiar was happening beneath the mockery. The Thunderbolts that were shot down had absorbed staggering punishment before falling. One aircraft returned from a May 4th mission, with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have turned a Spitfire or Messerschmitt into confetti. The massive air-cooled engine, lacking vulnerable liquid cooling systems, shrugged off hits that would stop an inline fighter cold. And when P-47 pilots did get their guns on target, the results were catastrophic. The heavy Browning battery created a convergence zone of destruction no German pilot had ever experienced. Unlike the rifle caliber, weapons of early war fighters or slow-firing cannon with limited ammunition, the Thunderbolt could sustain a devastating stream of fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in aerial combat. The event that began to shatter German perceptions occurred on June 26, 1943, over Lassay, France. It involved 2nd Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron and an encounter that would become legend on both sides. Johnson's formation of 48 P-47s was returning from escort duty when 16 Focke-Wulf 190s of 2 JG 26, led by Hauptmann Wilhelm Ferdinand Galland, younger brother of the famous Adolf Galland, fell on them from the sun. The German attack was a textbook bounce, executed with overwhelming speed. Johnson, flying at the rear, caught the full fury. 21 20mm cannon shells detonated across his aircraft in the first seconds. The canopy shattered. Hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit. The engine cowling tore away, and fire erupted behind the instrument panel. Wounded in the nose and leg by shrapnel, Johnson tried to bail out, but a shell had exploded in the canopy track, welding it shut. He was trapped in a dying aircraft 6 miles above the Earth. What followed defied every assumption about combat damage. With almost no forward visibility through an oil-smeared windscreen, a violently shaking engine, and controls that responded only intermittently, Johnson managed to level the Thunderbolt and point it toward England. The aircraft kept flying, absorbing trauma that would have reduced any other fighter to tumbling wreckage. Then it got worse. A lone Focke-Wulf, flown by an unknown pilot from 2JG-26, discovered the crippled Thunderbolt, limping toward the channel. At less than 170 miles per hour, the German positioned himself behind Johnson and opened fire with his 4 cannons and 2 machine guns. Johnson, unable to evade, hunched behind his armor plate and waited. The P-47 absorbed every cannon round. The German repositioned and fired again, this time with only his machine guns. The cannon ammunition exhausted. He pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck. Johnson could see his face clearly. Young, blonde, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. The German pilot repositioned a 3rd time and emptied his remaining machine gun ammunition into the Thunderbolt. Still, it flew. He pulled alongside once more, shook his head in apparent amazement, gave an informal salute, and peeled away, his ammunition gone. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston, with its engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. One cannon shell had exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another had detonated against the armor plate behind his seat. The engine had taken direct hits. Control cables were partially severed. 3 of the 4 main longerons, the structural backbone of the fuselage, were shot through. And yet, the aircraft had brought him home. The news sent tremors through both air forces. American engineers studying the wreckage realized they had underappreciated their own creation. German intelligence, receiving combat reports from the Seku JG-26, initially refused to believe it. No aircraft could absorb that much fire. But testimony from multiple pilots confirmed the impossible. The Thunderbolt had taken everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter could deliver and survived. By July 1943, American pilots were learning to stop fighting the German way and start exploiting the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group, had discovered the brutal secret through trial and error. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight. Use your power. Use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive mass, initially seen as a liability, became a weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter could achieve even in a vertical plunge. That speed could then be converted to altitude in a zoom, climb that left pursuers helplessly wallowing below. Captain Walker Bud Mahurin, one of the first American aces in Europe, refined what became known as the boom and zoom tactic, though pilots called it the Thunderbolt turkey shoot. Instead of engaging in traditional dogfights, P-47 formations climbed to 30,000 feet, higher than German fighters could effectively operate. When Luftwaffe aircraft appeared below, the Thunderbolts rolled inverted and dove, building speed that made deflection shooting impossible for the defenders. At the bottom of these screaming dives, the 850 caliber guns would speak. German pilots who survived described facing a wall of lead, an impenetrable zone of destruction where aircraft caught in the convergence. Pattern did not simply fall, they disintegrated. The true revelation of American firepower came during the August 17, 1943, dual raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany yet attempted. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, spotted a formation of Messerschmitt, 110 destroyer, aircraft positioning to attack, B-17s with their heavy cannon and rockets. The twin-engine Zerstörer were the Luftwaffe's specialized bomber killers, heavily armed but sluggish. Schilling's flight of 4 Thunderbolts rolled into their attack from 28,000 feet. Unteroffizier Hinrich Roth, a gunner in one of the Me-110s, survived to recount the moment in a POW interrogation. The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven. I opened fire at 800 meters, scoring hits. I saw my rounds strike the fighter's wing. The P-47 didn't even wobble. Then he fired. The aircraft ahead of us simply came apart, not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from the fuselage, the tail severed, the crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a 110 became nothing. 8 Me-110s and 109s were eliminated in less than a minute. The German pilots had never experienced such concentrated firepower. At convergence distance, typically set at 300 yards, all 8 guns' ballistic paths intersected in a zone roughly 6 feet in diameter, delivering over 100 projectiles per second. The ammunition mix, armor-piercing incendiary, tracer, and ball, was designed to pierce, ignite, and obliterate. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabby Gabreski, who would become the top American ace in Europe with 28 victories, described the effect. When you hit them with all 8, they don't just go down, they come apart. I saw a 109 literally cut in half, the tail falling one way, the nose and wings another. The pilot never knew what hit him. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe was discovering another horrifying reality. The P-47's performance improved dramatically with altitude. German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp maintained rated power up to 30,000 feet. German engines relying on mechanical superchargers saw their output degrade significantly above 25,000 feet. Oberstleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, encountered this lethal truth on October 8, 1943, leading Jagdgeschwader, won against B-17, formations over Bremen. Philipp found his Focke-Wulf, 106, sluggish and unresponsive in the thin air. The BMW 801 engine was gasping for oxygen, nearly 6 miles above the Earth. When P-47s of the 56th Fighter Group dove from 32,000 feet, the German fighters were utterly vulnerable. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot, spotted Philipp's distinctive Focke-Wulf with its elaborate nose art. His combat report was clinical. Opened fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along the entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Philipp's death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe High Command. If a man who had survived over 500 combat missions on both fronts could not survive against the Thunderbolts, what chance did ordinary pilots have? The investigation ordered by Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring delivered a sobering report in November 1943. The Thunderbolt's service ceiling exceeded 42,000 feet, higher than any German fighter could reach. Its dive speed approached the sound barrier. Its armor included a 3/8-inch steel plate behind the pilot, 1.2-inch bulletproof glass, and armored deflection plates around the engine. Most disturbingly, its structural ruggedness allowed it to absorb damage that would destroy 3 conventional fighters and still return home. In January 1944, a new variant began arriving in England that would complete the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. The P-47 D-22 featured a Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller with massive paddle blades 13 feet in diameter, biting into the air like broad oars. The improvement in climb rate was immediate and dramatic, from an anemic 2,200 feet per minute to 3,000 feet per minute at sea level. matching or exceeding German fighters. The distinctive thunderous roar, created by the blade tips reaching supersonic speeds, could be heard for miles. German ground troops began calling it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke of Jagdgeschwader 11, a veteran with over 200 missions, encountered the new variant in February 1944 near Hanover. He wrote in his combat diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. We bounced a formation, expecting our usual advantage. They turned into us and climbed with us. When we tried to disengage, they followed us up to 30,000 feet. Schmidt was caught and blown apart. Nothing left but smoke and fragments." These are not the same machines we laughed at last year. By March 1944, P-47s carrying external fuel tanks could escort bombers deep into Germany, extending range to over 1,000 miles. The Luftwaffe's response was to concentrate on the bombers, hoping to inflict unsustainable losses. But this required flying through the P-47 escort screen, an increasingly catastrophic proposition. Major Günther Röhl, one of Germany's top aces with 275 victories, survived an encounter with Thunderbolts on March 6, 1944, that left him badly wounded. He later recalled, "We saw them above us, fat silhouettes against the sun. Someone laughed and said, 'Here come the flying pigs.' Nobody was laughing 30 seconds later. They came down like an avalanche, faster than we could react. The first pass eliminated 3 of our fighters, just gone, transformed into burning debris. Their guns didn't fire in bursts like ours. They poured out solid streams of fire. Getting caught in that stream meant instant destruction." The escort missions revealed another P-47 advantage: endurance. The big radial engines could cruise efficiently at high altitude, remaining with the bombers for hours. As more P-51 Mustangs took over long-range duties in spring 1944, P-47 units increasingly focused on ground attack, a role that would make them the most feared aircraft in the German arsenal. The Thunderbolt's heavy machine gun battery proved equally devastating against ground targets. Armor-piercing incendiary ammunition could penetrate the top armor of most German vehicles, and a 2-second burst put 160 half-inch projectiles into a target area the size of a truck. The addition of bombs and rockets transformed the P-47 into a true multi-role monster. The D-25 variant could carry 2 1,000-pound bombs under the wings and a 500-pounder under the fuselage, a load equal to early war medium bombers. Later variants added zero-length rocket stubs for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, each packing the punch of a 105mm artillery shell. Oberst Hans von Luck, commanding the 125th Panzergrenadier Regiment during the Normandy campaign, experienced this firsthand. They came in low, so low you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. Engines roaring, rockets screaming, then the hammer of those heavy machine guns. A column of our trucks simply ceased to exist. 20 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass. The psychological effect was devastating. They called them jabos, but these were flying artillery with the accuracy of snipers. On June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe discovered how completely the balance had shifted. Over 500 P-47s provided an impenetrable umbrella over the invasion beaches. German fighters attempting to reach the landing zones were annihilated. Oberleutnant Wolfgang Fischer of Jagdgeschwader 2, one of only 3 German pilots to reach the beaches that day, reported, "The sky belonged to the Americans. Thunderbolts were stacked from sea level to 30,000 feet. We tried to break through at dawn with 12 fighters from our Gruppe. I was the only one to return. Their guns turned our fighters into aluminum rain." In the weeks following D-Day, P-47s systematically paralyzed German daylight movement. In June alone, 9th Air Force Thunderbolts claimed 651 locomotives, 3,847 trucks, 512 tanks and armored vehicles, and 4,543 horse-drawn vehicles destroyed. The Wehrmacht was forced to move only at night, fatally slowing their response to Allied advances. Nothing the Germans tried. Reinforced armor, more flak guns, camouflage, could neutralize the Thunderbolt threat. Perhaps the ultimate vindication of the P-47's evolution came in encounters with German jet fighters. The Messerschmitt Me-262, with its 540 mph top speed, should have been untouchable by propeller-driven fighters. But Thunderbolt pilots discovered they could catch jets during takeoff and landing, or in high-speed dives from altitude. On November 27, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group dove a P-47 from 28,000 feet, reaching speeds approaching 500 mph and catching an Me-262 in level flight. The jet pilot, confident in his speed advantage, never saw the diving Thunderbolt until Meyer's guns opened up at 400 yards. Meyer's combat report noted, "The enemy aircraft disintegrated under fire. Large pieces, including both engines, separated from the fuselage. The pilot did not escape." By early 1945, specialized P-47 variants were deployed specifically to counter jets and V-1 flying bombs, with water methanol injection boosting. Powered at 2,800 horsepower, these ultimate Thunderbolts could reach 470 mph at 30,000 feet. Major George Bostwick, commanding the 63rd Fighter Squadron, shot down 2 Me-262s in March 1945, his tactical report emphasizing, "The jets are faster, but they can't turn, and they can't take punishment. One good burst, and they come apart like paper." The ultimate demonstration of American industrial might came on January 1, 1945, during Operation Bodenplatte. The Luftwaffe's desperate attempt to destroy Allied air power. Nearly 900 German fighters launched surprise attacks on airfields across Belgium and the Netherlands. At Y-34 Airfield near Metz, home to the 365th Fighter Group's P-47s, German fighters destroyed 22 Thunderbolts on the ground. A captured German pilot, brought to the command post, pointed at the burning aircraft and taunted, "What do you think of that?" Major George Brookings' reply became legendary. He pointed to the flight line, where ground crews were already clearing wreckage and preparing hard stands for replacements. "By tomorrow, we'll have 40 new ones. How long will it take you to replace your pilots?" The German's smirk vanished. Within 48 hours, factory-fresh P-47D-40s filled the flight line, flown in from depots in England. The Luftwaffe lost 271 aircraft and 213 pilots in Bodenplatte. Many of them irreplaceable instructors and squadron leaders. The Americans lost 134 aircraft total across all attacked airfields. All were replaced within a week. The numbers told the story of inevitable defeat. Republic Aviation produced 15,983 P-47s during the war. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory completed 1 Thunderbolt every hour. The Evansville plant in Indiana, built from empty farmland in 1942, was producing 500 aircraft per month by 1944. Each P-47D required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, and an engine containing 2,400 components, machined to tolerances of thousandths of an inch. American workers, many of them women who had never seen an airplane before. Pearl Harbor assembled these complex machines with precision, exceeding peacetime standards. Ammunition consumption was equally staggering. By mid-1944, Thunderbolt sorties consumed over 10 million rounds of 50 caliber ammunition per month. Each cartridge was manufactured to tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch, ensuring flawless feeding. And the pilot training pipeline was even more overwhelming. By 1944, the United States was graduating 30,000 pilots annually from advanced training, more than Germany had trained during the entire war. American pilots arrived in Europe with a minimum of 400 flight hours, including 100 hours in advanced fighters. German pilots, by contrast, entered combat with less than 100 hours total time by war's end. Lieutenant Eugene Roberts, arriving in September 1944, captured the disparity. I had 420 hours in my logbook, including 75 in the P-47. I'd fired at towed targets, practiced deflection shooting, studied gun camera film from actual combat. My first mission, I knew exactly what to do. The German pilot I faced couldn't have had half my experience. It wasn't even a fair fight. In March 1945, Oberstleutnant Josef Priller, the same pilot who had mocked the P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, was interviewed by German propaganda officials seeking material to boost morale. His statement, deemed too demoralizing for publication, revealed the complete transformation. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Weapons that never jam, never overheat, never run out of ammunition in normal combat. It carries bombs like a medium bomber, fires rockets like artillery, and fights like a fighter when needed. But beyond the machine is what it represents. Unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20. We lose one, it's gone forever. Their pilots arrive better trained than our instructors. We have nothing but courage, and courage without resources is just delayed defeat. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know the end has come. The captured German interrogation files, updated continuously at Oberursel, traced this painful evolution from minimal threat in April 1943 to critical threat at all altitudes by June 1944 to unsurvivable in direct engagement by March 1945. At a reunion of German and American fighter pilots in Phoenix in 1985, Generalleutnant Adolf Galland, former head of the Luftwaffe fighter arm, was asked about the P-47. His answer, recorded on video, summarized everything. We made a terrible mistake. We saw this big, heavy fighter and laughed, saying the Americans don't understand air combat. We were the ones who didn't understand. The Americans didn't try to build a European fighter. They built an American one, designed around production, firepower, and survivability. They understood that in a war of attrition, the plane that could take punishment and deliver devastating firepower would win. The first time I flew a captured P-47 after the war, I understood everything. The power was incredible. It climbed like it was falling upward. But what really impressed me was realizing that America built over 15,000 of these complex machines while fighting a two-ocean war. Those guns, we called them Roosevelt's piano because of the sound they made. Once you heard that sound, you never forgot it. Many of my friends heard it for the last time. The P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision. It ended the war as an instrument of overwhelming force. Its 8 synchronized Browning, machine guns rewriting the rules of aerial warfare, and burying the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of steel. German pilots had laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.